What's up, guys? Back with episode 5 of the Patchwork Network, and we made it our first week. I'd say it's a pretty big deal. You know what else is a pretty big deal? Today is Mother's Day, and that's a pretty big deal. So, we're going to take a look back at some of the most important and greatest, uh, well, 25 of history's greatest moms. This is an article, thank you to Mental Floss and Suzanne Raga. So, if you want to check that out, I'm going to read through most of it, but, this is my research. But first off, I'd definitely like to say thank you, Mom, for all that you do. I love you. I know I don't always show it, but you're the best. So, let's dive right in. Alright, first up on our list is Marie Curie. Now, although Marie Curie is best known for being the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, she also raised her own 2 daughters alone after her husband died in an accident in 1906. One of her daughters, Irene Joliot-Curie, went on to co-win the Nobel Prize in chemistry with her husband for their own work with radioactivity. She said that her mother instilled hard work and flexibility in her children. The next one is Sojourner Truth. I think I pronounced that right. I apologize if anyone takes offense at my inability to say names right. In 1826, Sojourner Truth and her baby daughter escaped slavery in Ulster County, New York. Soon after her escape, she heard that her 5-year-old son, Peter, was illegally sold to a man in Alabama. Truth raised money for a lawyer, filed a complaint in court, and successfully got her son out of slavery, a landmark case in which a black woman was successfully able to sue a white man and win. Truth went on to become a Christian preacher in New York and toured the Northeast, speaking about the Bible, abolition, and women's suffrage. Next is Abigail Adams. She was the wife of President John Adams and was the second First Lady of the United States. Because her husband was often away from home for work, she often single-handedly ran their farm, wrote letters supporting equal rights for women and the abolition of slavery, and educated their 5 kids, including future President John Quincy Adams. Quincy Adams wrote that, "My mother was an angel upon earth. She was a minister of blessings to all human beings within her sphere of action. Her heart was the abode of heavenly purity. She was the real personification of female virtue, of piety, of charity, of ever active and never intermitting benevolence." Next we have Irina Sendler. She was a Polish employee at the Warsaw Social Welfare Department who smuggled almost 2,500 Jewish children out of the Warsaw Ghetto during the Holocaust, which saved their lives. She used the codename Jolanta. She gave these children false identification documents, established temporary identities for them, and placed them in convents, orphanages, and Christian homes. Although the Nazis arrested her, tortured her, and sentenced her to execution, she survived because the Gestapo was bribed. She didn't give them any information about the whereabouts of the children or the inner workings of her smuggling operations. She was a mother of 3 herself, and she received Poland's Order of the White Eagle Award in 2003. That's some strong will right there. Next we have Kathy Headley. She was a mother of 7, the youngest of whom she adopted from Romania, started Mothers Without Borders to help orphan children around the world. Beginning in 1992, she led a group of volunteers to distribute relief supplies to orphanages and train caregivers in Romania. Since then, Mothers Without Borders has sent volunteers to help children in Bolivia, Bosnia, Guatemala, India, Mexico, Zimbabwe, Uganda, and Nepal. Now, here's a familiar one, J.K. Rowling. Now, J.K. Rowling wrote the first 4 Harry Potter books as a single mother, while briefly receiving state benefits to get by, and she now serves as the president of Gingerbread, an organization that works with single parents and their children to find resources and programs to help them succeed. She said she's prouder of her years as a single mother than any other part of her life. For Mother's Day in 2016, she tweeted, "Today's Mother's Day in the UK. If your mom isn't here to treat, do something nice for yourself because she's part of you too. Take a hug too." Okay, here's an interesting one. Ho the famous mother of Genghis Khan. She survived getting kidnapped, widowed, and being an outcast, to becoming the mother and advisor to one of the largest empires the world has ever known, as well as being one of the few people who could yell at Genghis Khan and get away with it. Around the time of her first marriage, she was kidnapped by Yasuke, the chief of a minor clan. Legend has it she took off her shirt, threw it to her husband, and shouted, "Fly for your life while you live, remember my fragrance," and was forced to marry her captor. Several years and children later, Yasuke was killed, and Holan and her children were kicked out of the clan, forced to barely survive on whatever they could forage on the Mongolian steppes. Eventually, one of her children, with Yasuke, Genghis Khan, would become a great conqueror, but his mother could still put him in his place. According to some research by Frank McLinn, Genghis was planning to execute his brother for treason when Holan found out, traveled to his headquarters and begged him to be merciful. When that didn't work, Holan grew angry, got to her feet, and roundly rebuked the Khan for thinking to execute his brother. Genghis raised her up and said he would grant the boon because of his love and deference for his mother. Our next is Candy Lightner. In 1980, a hit-and-run drunk driver killed one of Candy Lightner's 13-year-old twin daughters, Carrie. The driver had 3 prior convictions for drunk driving and had been arrested 2 days prior for a different hit-and-run. Within a few months, Lightner founded MADD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, to try to end drunk driving, pass together tougher legislation, and help the victims of drunk drivers. Though its work to raise awareness and get legislation passed, MADD has helped save hundreds of thousands of lives. Next we have Indira Gandhi. As India's first female prime minister, she worked to institute democracy and create jobs to combat food shortages. She was responsible for the Green Revolution, which made the country self-sufficient and no longer reliant on imported grains. And she also entrusted a sense of duty in her 2 sons, Rajiv and Sanjay Gandhi, who both grew up to become politicians. Rajiv became Prime Minister of India after his mother was assassinated in 1984. Anne Marie Slaughter worked as a law professor and academic dean and was the first person to serve as the director of policy planning for the United States State Department. In 2012, she wrote a massively popular article called "Why Women Still Can't Have It All" and discussed her decision to leave her high-stress government job so she could be closer to home and take better care of her 2 teenage sons. Her article sparked a national debate about how mothers balance work and home life and how society and the workplace need to change to better facilitate mothers who work. Next is Elizabeth Cady Stanton, a leader in the women's suffrage and abolitionist movement who helped to get women the right to vote via the 19th Amendment. She gave all kinds of speeches and wrote articles, and she was able to still support education for girls, and her own daughters went to college at Vassar and Columbia. Then we have Nancy Edison, who was Thomas Edison's mother. Although some stories about his mother's virtues were most likely exaggerated, we do know that rather than give up on his education, she decided to homeschool her son after his teacher deemed him mentally ill or incompetent, which is the term addled. Edison may have just been dyslexic at the time, before that learning disorder was studied and understood, said of her, "My mother was the making of me. She was so true, so sure of me, and I felt I had something to live for, so I must not disappoint." Then we have Julie Andrews. Although she's best known for her roles as Mary Poppins and Maria von Trapp, she's also an author. She wrote the Very Fairy Princess children's book series with her daughter Emma Walton Hamilton. Hamilton told Today that her mother was firm, protective, and despite her busy schedule, very hands-on, always there, making eggs at 5 o'clock in the morning before we went to school. Practically perfect in every way. Another important mother was Princess Diana. She used her status as a royal figure to work with charities that supported children's hospitals and to raise awareness and combat landmines, which were apparently a significant problem in the 90s. Years after her death, her sons were only 15 and 12 when she died. Her legacy remains one of humanitarianism. Her oldest, Prince William, notably became a royal patron of a child bereavement charity. Speaking about Mother's Day, he said, "I too have felt and still feel the emptiness on such a day as Mother's Day." Another mother is Angelina Jolie. She does lots of humanitarian work, supports refugees and education. She's an Oscar-winning actress, but she's become best known for her charity roles. She got involved with humanitarian work for refugees and people displaced because of conflicts when she was filming Lara Croft Tomb Raider in Cambodia in 2000. She adopted a son from the country and eventually has adopted children from Ethiopia, Vietnam, and as well as her 3 biological children with husband Brad Pitt. Though she has traveled more than 30 countries, her role as a UN Goodwill Ambassador, that when she has a day off, the first thing she does is get up and take the kids out. That is the most important thing to do of the day. No matter how tired she might be, she plans outings for each and all. The mother of Martin Luther King Jr. is our next. Alberta Williams King. She played the organ and founded the choir at Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, and she was also involved with women's groups, the NAACP and the YWCA. She set about to raise her 3 children with a healthy sense of self-respect and taught them that the segregation they saw every day was simply a social condition rather than a natural order. MLK Jr. wrote in his autobiography, "She made it clear that she opposed this system and that I must never allow it to make me feel inferior." At this time, Mother had no idea that the little boy in her arms would years later be involved in a struggle against the system she was speaking of. In 1974, 6 years after her son was assassinated in Memphis, she was shot and killed at her organ at church. And the last one on this list is Ann Jarvis, and she inspired the movement that eventually made Mother's Day into a national holiday. After most of her babies died of disease, only 4 of her possible 13 children survived to adulthood. She wanted to help other mothers. She organized Mother's Day work clubs in what is now West Virginia to help provide medical care, raise money for medicines, and improve sanitary conditions for poor mothers. After her death, Jarvis's daughter, Anna Jarvis, built off of the work of her mother by writing letters and giving speeches in support of Mother's Day, and President Woodrow Wilson designated Mother's Day as a national holiday in 1914. Unfortunately, Anna Jarvis never became a mother herself, and she became horrified by how flour, chocolate, and greeting card companies exploited Mother's Day for their own financial gain. Jarvis advocated boycotts of Mother's Day and tried to sue companies that were socializing the holiday, but the sentiment of appreciating mothers and all the work they do remained, even if the commercial aspect never really disappeared. As you can see, mothers have played an important role all throughout history. I'm sure there were even more, like the mother of Alexander the Great, or Mary, the mother of Jesus, who, still had to live her life and, was able to, help the Christian faith come about and still, be a mother. Because there are stories in the Bible about when, Jesus ran off. She was still a mother. She was still worried about him. I'm sure there's people like Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha's mother. I'm sure she told him to follow what he believed was right. Or even Kung Fuzi's mother, who most likely was the one that taught him respect of ancestors, which founded that belief. Mothers have played an important role all throughout history, no matter where you look. I'm sure every president had a mom that told them they could do whatever they wanted if they just reached for the stars. And I think we have to appreciate the most important mother of all, because that would be mine. Because without her, I wouldn't be here, and we might not have this awesome podcast. So thanks again, Mom, and I really do love you. Happy Mother's Day.